can't thank you all enough for coming today. You attendees really have made this conference excellent. I've heard some great stories from the meet and greet last night that really does warm my heart. Knowing the charities that we support, your support here this weekend has been so great, and I really appreciate everyone's spirit and the way everyone sort of rallied around and really have come to support the Kiwanis Club and what we do here and the mission of what we try to accomplish. For those of you that don't know, my name is Brian Wall, and I'm the Vice President of the Kiwanis Club here in the Exeter area. At this time, I want to personally thank our speakers for taking time out of their busy schedules to be here this weekend to help us raise money for the local children's charities. Peter Robbins, Kathleen Martin, Jennifer Stein, Bob Terrio, Paul and Ben Eno, Shane Sorois, Mark D'Antonio, the Seacoast Saucers folks of New England, and Granite Sky, and Mike Stevens. Again, last night, giving up their time for the Meet the Speakers event, which I heard was excellent. I can't thank them enough. We are privileged again this year, as in the past, to have Peter Robbins MC this event. Peter, as you know, is one of the world's leading lecturers and writers on the subject of UFOs. And I'm going to turn it back over to Peter for the day's events. And I thank you all again for everything that you've done this weekend. I really appreciate it. So a round of applause for each of you, too. Thank you, everybody.
Mike is the founder of Granite State Services, which focuses on supporting those who have had extraterrestrial encounters and abduction experiences. His group is dedicated to the idea that no one should have to face these kinds of experiences alone. Mike is a New Hampshire native, born and bred, and when not assisting others with their experiences, can be found in the forests and mountains of this beautiful state, camping and hiking. He combines his straightforward New England values with his own experiences in an effort to give people a positive outlook on their own experiences. A seasoned paranormal researcher and investigator, he works to change the stigma surrounding the abduction phenomena by promoting public awareness of the subject and by encouraging and supporting other experiencers. He was the initiating force behind the New Hampshire historical marker for Betty and Barney Hill's UFO encounter, which Kathleen Martin discussed in her talk yesterday, and has been interviewed by newspapers, television, and radio locally as well as internationally. He has been, Mike's personal experiences began at about the age of 3 and have been ongoing ever since then. Learning to deal with his own experiences has assisted him to be of service to other experiencers in overcoming their own traumas. And anyone who has ever been a volunteer in assisting other people knows that the work itself is its own reward. The title of his talk is People, Not Proof, and is focused on how and why people's experiences are more powerful than, say, scientific proof. Please give a big hand to our first speaker of the day, Mike Stevens.
Hello and good morning, everyone. It's nice to look out here and see some familiar faces. It's good to look out here and see any faces. It's a short draw to be here, the first speaker on Sunday, as Peter said, but I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy you're all here with me as well. Excuse my voice, it's a little bit raspy from hauling on the trolley all day yesterday, but we'll get through this. Today's presentation is going to be a little bit different from what you're going to get from most of the other speakers from yesterday and the rest of the day. I'm going to give you a little bit about what Granite Sky is and what we do, and then we're going to take a real inside look at the experiencer phenomena. As Peter said, my name's Mike Stevens, and I'm the founder of Granite Sky. We're going to go through this real quick, and I'll give you the website at the end. But basically, we provide lots of services for anybody who's had any type of extraterrestrial experience. We do monthly events right up the street. We're local. We're very involved in the community. We have events that are for people who have just had experiences, so they can come out and talk in a public group setting. We have galactic gazing. We have meditations where we actually try to make contact. All experiences are not negative. We have a Martian matinee. We watch movies that are based on aliens, UFOs, extraterrestrials, and discuss them. What Hollywood got right, what's real, what's hidden in there. And we have social saucers, which is a great format for any type of discussion surrounding UFOs. Second to helping experiences, we're big on preserving history, starting with New Hampshire history and then reaching out into New England history. As Peter said, I was the one who started the petition that got the marker for Betty and Barney Hill. I do the trolley rides every year, not because it's fun, but it's history. It's living history. This stuff is real. And New Hampshire has a great history with UFOs. Obviously, I think most of us are aware of the Betty and Barney Hill case. If you're not aware of the Exeter case, I'm not sure why you're sitting here. We have our ties back to Roswell when the 509 moved from Roswell to Pease Base. And though it's controversial, we might have the first picture of a UFO right here in the state. Going north a little bit, we have the Allagash abductions. Down to Massachusetts, we have the Andreessen abductions and the Tom Reed case out in Western Mass. These go back in history. Governor John Winthrop recorded maybe one of the possible earliest abductions here in New England and missing time. Not of himself, but of men in the community. I'm not going to give you all the details. We're not running through cases today, but yeah, if you're interested, Google it. Ensuring the future. Speak your truth, no matter what. Nobody is going to solve this problem for us. Nobody is going to say it's real. We have to do this ourselves. Don't be afraid. Be part of the legacy. There is probably more UFO history of New England in this room right now than you will ever see on these stages because people are afraid to speak. You're not helping anybody by not helping yourself. These stories need to come out. Now we're going to get into people, not proof. So pretty much as long as there's been people on this earth, there's been some reference to extraterrestrials, sky beings, sky brothers, creation stories from the sky, religious stories references as well. I think most of you have seen this. We're not going to get into it too much. Oh, I'm going to shut it. There we go. I'll just kind of let this slide in the background. All through our history, there's references, lights in the sky, UFOs. Yeah, it's arguable. You could say, well, no, we're not interpreting right, but it's there. Some of it is pretty clear that it's an object in the sky, and it's been around through every phase of our existence. And in every culture, it's not, this is my problem with disclosure a little bit, everybody wants it from the American standpoint. This is a global problem. Not one country can come out and disclose the whole issue. And apparently there are more of these in there than I thought. There we go. Then we have some of our megalithic structures that we don't know how to build today. But to me, the answer is really clear. The answer is written on the wall. We're not alone, and we never have been. So we fast forward to modern day. Seriously, it's 2018, and we're still arguing, are UFOs real? Are you kidding me? We've known this. We knew this. This is not something we have to discover. This is something we knew and have lost. Well before planes, satellites, space shuttles, before we had anything in the sky that was man-made, we were seeing this stuff. And we somehow forgot? No. We knew this. And this is where they get us to. I want to believe. How many people are familiar with this term? How many people see the problem in it? We don't believe. They won't even let us believe. They want us to believe. You look in any small town in America, there's multiple. There's churches. Not everybody believes in the same religion, but there is a church in every town. Multiple churches for the same religion even. And nobody's bothered. Why? Because they believe in it. It's okay because they believe in it. We need to get to this point where we believe in it, where it's okay, where we don't have to huddle once a year at a conference. This needs to be every day. We have to stop wanting to believe. We have to believe. And this was just, are we really looking? The answer's right in front of us. It's out there. It always has been. So ufology. I think if we look back, had to make a high school project collage, something like this would work for ufology. Do people agree? Does that look like a good representation of ufology? It used to. This is what it's become now, in my opinion. And just before I go on and further, we have a lot of other speakers here, the great speakers. I know them personally. This is a generalized statement, so don't go in there and tell them I said they were, But yeah, it's become an entertainment market. If you look, not a lot of new information has come out from the nuts and bolts style ufology. We're not really learning anything new for the most part. It's gotten to where people in the field have taken on celebrity status. And it's become a game of numbers, TV show ratings, this, that. And again, self-marketing sales. It's an entertainment market. And why? Because we can't get enough of it. We cannot wait to hand over our money to them. We can't. I am guilty of this as well. I love all the pop culture stuff. I'll be the first one going to buy a little alien thing or tuning on to Ancient Aliens. But we've created a monster here. And if it is a circus, like any great circus, when the main act's not enough, there's always a backup plan. And in this circus of ufology, it has become the experiencers. We are the freak show. Who are the experiencers? People who have had a close encounter. I'm talking about people who have been face to face with something that's not a light in the sky. When they're stuck in a moment where their whole perception of life has to change, they now don't have to believe. They do not have to want to believe. They know there is something out there. Of course, this includes our abductees, our contactees, but not just in the classic sense from the 50s, but our new generation of people going out CE5ing and trying to make contact. And of course, there's our star seeds. Basically, anybody who's come face to face with the truth. The experiencers have been manipulated by the industry for a long time. For a long time, nobody wanted to hear it. Then when they did, they were used for the ooh, ah, the horror factor, the story of it all. So a lot of them kept quiet, and a lot of it was internal as well as external. From not accepting each other, not accepting this, people just stopped talking about it. And we kept all the secrets locked inside. We are sitting on the biggest secret to face mankind. We know firsthand. Do we want to solve this? Listen, let us explain what we've been through. You don't have to believe it all, but accept it. Accept us that we are people. We are not dealing with an alien problem. We are dealing with a people problem. It wasn't always like this. There are a few good guys in the field that started. Bud Hopkins, one of the greats, respect him highly. Along with his ranks is John Mack. These are guys who put their careers on the line to prove this. And then to a lesser extent, Roger Lear. These are guys who went out of the way to say, look, something is happening. They were really trying to help, but we have this problem of proof again. And that's what created a monster. We got into cookie cutter cases. They were looking to prove something, so they were looking for cases that backed up their hypothesis. We wanted cases that fit in a nice little narrow box, that fit a narrative. This left a lot of people outside of this because they didn't fit into that box. I've worked with a lot of people in the range of experiences, is so far beyond what we used to think an abduction was. With this was a double-edged sword. If you had a story and it matched the narrative, they said, well, of course that's your story. You just copied it. You couldn't win one way or the other. We didn't want to believe anything that made us stretch our mind. One of the first cases that came out was almost ignored completely because he said they came down and had intercourse with him and left. And people were like, what? Are you crazy? This can't happen. Here we are today, and we know that almost every ongoing abduction case has parts of reproductive testing in it. It was right there the whole time. We didn't want to look at it because we were trying to prove something else. I've said this up here before. I'll probably say it again, and I'll probably say it until I'm dead. These are not books. These are not stories. These are people's lives. And that's what we're going to look at today. We're not going to be talking about UFOs. We're not going to be talking about aliens. We're not going to be talking about abductions. We're going to talk about what the aftermath of these events are in everyday life for people. Because we don't really know. It could have nothing to do with UFOs or little gray men. But what we do know, what we can prove 100%, is that the effect is real. The effect is far-reaching. I've had the chance to talk to people all around the world, especially thanks to the internet. You know, and that's the thing. The effect part is the same. It doesn't affect anybody differently in China than it does here. The personal trauma, the effect is the same. That is real. You know, and I've got to talk to some of the bigger names too. I think everybody knows Travis, and that's Charlie Fultz of the Allagash abductions. But where I get most of the good information that I think, not that these guys don't have good information, don't get me wrong, but comes from you guys. The people whose name they might never know. You guys have the information. You guys who have had experiences have the full scope. You know what went on for you. It doesn't matter if it matches what's been out there before. Val and Chuck talked about some of the synchronicities a little bit yesterday. It happens. People have something weird and they think they're the only one and they feel like some type of loser or freak. And it's until they say it, they don't meet that other person. We all unlock each other. That is why the communication and being able to talk about this stuff is so important. So I talked to a lot of experiencers who have become personal friends over the years. And I told them I was going to be here today. And I said, what do you think I should talk about? What is the most important thing as an experiencer that you would like to see? They said, stick it to them. Don't give them the horror stories. Don't tell them your experience. Don't be entertainment. Tell them what it is like to be us. And I said, yeah, I think you're right. So, are we all familiar with post-traumatic stress disorder? There are three major differences between that and what experiencers have. One, with a lot of the post-traumatic stress disorder, people remember what caused it. They remember the incident that set it off. That's not always true with experiencers. It's not always true with post-traumatic stress disorder either, but more times than not. Post-traumatic stress disorder is accepted as being real. Being an experiencer is not by far, not in the general public. And the last one, the big one, there's treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder. There is not for an experiencer, even though you're suffering the same changes, the same emotional and physical changes. Your brain actually changes with the trauma from these events. The area that helps us distinguish between past and present memory shrinks. So we don't just talk about an incident, we relive it. And we get it in our head and we can't separate, we can't just tell it to you like a story. We have to relive it emotionally, visually in our heads. The area of the brain that processes emotions and is linked to fear responses grows. Yeah, but are we really paranoid if they're out to get us? I'm not saying they're all out to get us, but again, this overlapped with the other. These are we have to adapt to live in the 3D day-to-day life with these things that we can't get treatment for. The part of the brain that regulates negative emotions when confronted with specific stimuli shrinks. So we have a hard time not overreacting or not jumping right back into that moment when there's a trigger. The problem is, for a lot of us, we don't know what the stimuli is, and it can be anything. There's obviously the actual abductions that are usually reoccurring that the abductee or experiencer will have to go through. But there's also reliving the memories. This can be in nightmares. This can be, in flashbacks. There's the physical stuff to deal with. Waking up with nosebleeds. Waking up with strange marks on your body that you have no idea how they got there. This all plays on your mind as well. It's not just a physical thing. You're wondering how this happened. Where were you when this happened? There are obviously the implants. That is, again, another big mental stress. Why, how is there something in my body that shouldn't be? And yes, there's the fear of death. We talk about it more with the cattle mutilations, but it does occur in humans. There are human mutilations. This is things that ride on people's mind, especially experiencers. When you're already in a spot that you can be taken from where you are with no control of it, dropped off wherever, whenever, yeah, that becomes real. That's not something most of you have to deal with. That's not something most of you have to think about before you get up and go to work. This is every day for us. It is not just when the actual experience is happening. That is only a small fraction of it. The day-to-day life, this stuff builds and builds. And for a lot of us, the experience has started as kids. We have been carrying this baggage and building on it for years. And we would be ticking time bombs if we don't have the chance to express it. Then there's some of the weirder stuff, the unexplainable stuff. Missing time. What do you do with that? You know how long it takes to get from here to the grocery store, and the next thing you know, it's 6 hours later. You really have to cope with reality and what is going on at this point in your life. What do you do? It's waking up in bed with grassy or muddy feet when you haven't been outside. It's waking up without clothes on. The wrong clothes, the clothes on backwards. And then there is, also the very real fear of military intervention. It doesn't happen with all cases, but it does happen with some. And I think Peter's going to give a great lecture this afternoon that might get into this a little better. But yeah, it's part of the experiencer's mental state. We all look up and we see the helicopter. We do tend to see more of them. The triggers can be anything, like I said, in day-to-day life. It can be a smell. It can be a sound. I have a friend who happened to be just going into his kitchen and the light hit his crock pot cover in just the right way. Triggered an immediate attack and flashback. This is what I'm trying to get through to you guys. We can't even go to the kitchen. We can't even go to the bathroom. There is no part of our life that is normal. Not one moment. From the moment the first experience happens till we die, we do not know what normal is anymore. It's certain places will trigger fear in us. We might not know why. We might find ourselves in a place that we didn't know existed. Or even worse, when you know an area and you find yourself in a little clearing in that area, only to go back to find that area does not actually exist. We're adding this in slowly. This keeps piling up, this keeps piling up, this keeps piling up. And this is our everyday life. We get strange phobias and connections with animals. I personally do not do birds, as some of you know. But yet the owls are deeply connected with the experiences, and a lot of times it's deers, but sometimes it's, squirrels because they have the big black eyes. You never know. It could be anything. If it's somehow triggered and attached to the memory, with an experience. It can be anything. Paranormal stuff. This is where it gets hard. How do we draw the line? Because a lot of this doubles up. If I'm an experiencer and I have some of this stuff happen, I think it's because of them. If you've never seen a UFO, you might think your house is haunted, because it can start with simple things that happen in both scenarios. Things move in the house. Things go missing in the house. You hear noises in the house. You catch shadows walking through the house. You wake up with strange marks on you. None of this is outside of the realm of a haunting. None of this is outside the realm of an abduction. There's a big overlap here. And trying to determine what is a question we're not going to get to today, or an answer we're going to get to today. But again, these are things that happen. So at some point in any experiencer's life, after dealing with these experiences, sometimes it can be multiple years worth, sometimes it can be one big event. Something triggers it. You hit a breaking point. We are the first ones to deny this. Nobody wants attention for this. Nobody wants to deal with this. Nobody wants this to be them. We are the first ones to make up excuses, and we can come up with some dandies to why this is not real, why this is not happening. But eventually we get to a point where we can't fool ourselves anymore. We have to look ourselves in the eye. We have to determine, are we crazy or is this real? That's a big step. That is a hard pill to swallow. And once you swallow it, it doesn't sit well in your stomach. I've talked to so many people who are experiencers who have been, this close to overdosing on purpose, who have had the guns in their mouth ready to pull the triggers. This is a lot. This is a lot to handle. And once you get there and you admit it, it's all you can think about. It becomes your life. Why me? Why this? How this? How do you get away from it? You can't. It affects everything you do. And we don't get a little handout book when we're kids, how to deal with this. And with this, you have this internal thought process of trying to keep your sanity, you always got that one foot in the door. You're always trying to all right, maybe there's a way out of this. It's not true. You can't. Once you get there, you're done. And some of the stranger side of it, and some of probably the hardest stuff, I think, is the reproductive stuff. I think it's a lot worse for females than males. But how many people in the audience have children? How would you feel if your child was ripped away from you? This happens to experiencers all the time. They become pregnant when they can't be pregnant or shouldn't be medically able to be pregnant, carry almost to term, and then all of a sudden, there is no baby, there is no sign of a pregnancy. They're abducted or taken again they're shown the child briefly, but they're not able to spend time with it. And even though some of you might think, why would you want to? This is a monster. This is part of them. This is actually part of them. This is like your child, and it is ripped away from them. So on top of all this other emotional baggage we just got through, try adding this to that. Can you imagine? Can you imagine having your child ripped away from you by something you could not see, something you could not stop, and knowing it could happen again? And with that, you get a lot of tossed feelings. A lot of people do not like extraterrestrials who have had experiences. They think they're bad, they think they're negative, and with good reason. Some of it is absolutely terrifying, some of it is absolutely intrusive, but we don't know why they're doing it, so I don't like to put the negative connotation on it. But with that side of it, they're also conflicted because they feel connection to them at the same time. They have families that they can't see, that they feel separated from. And there's love there, which makes earthly relationships hard. because you're conflicted, you're torn. You get into earthly relationships, you don't know how you're supposed to feel. You don't feel like you should be with somebody because you feel like your heart belongs somewhere else. And not only that, it's the daily baggage of everything else we just talked about. We don't do stuff normal, you know? Like, if we live alone, you don't know that, you know, we're shutting every curtain and running to the bathroom in the dark as quick as we can in the middle of the night because we're so terrified to look up or even stop. You know, we don't act normal because we're not. We have been affected because this effect is real. The other big part of it, I think a lot of us have heard the idea that the experiences run in families. I believe in this. I have a family history with it myself. For those of you who had children, think of it this now. You're passing this on to your children. All of this you just went through, all of this you have to do, there's a pretty good chance your child's going to have to deal with that. As parents, we only want the best for our kids. We don't want them to suffer how we had to suffer on any aspect of life. We want them to be better than us. That's the whole goal of being a parent. And we've just cursed them. But is it a curse? It's scary. Maybe we've opened them up to the opportunity of being part of the biggest secret on earth. I mean, it's all on how we want to look at it. At the end of the day, a lot of people have to get into relationships with other experiencers because it can work the other way, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people struggle so hard and they're so programmed into being this little shell of fear that they can't function around other people. They need somebody who understands it. I've seen it recently. A good friend of mine just started a dating website for experiencers only. And when he first told me, I kind of like, are you for real? But no. The more I thought about it, it's like, it actually works. It makes sense. Aside from the physical abductions and things, there is a very non-physical part of this. I think Seco Saucers touched on this a little bit yesterday. There's a calling for a lot of people, whether you want to call them starseeds or whatever, who feel a connection to the beings who haven't necessarily had physical contact with them. They are dealing with a different set of problems. The same problem, not being believed, not being able to talk about it, but they're being called to different places, different times. Their dreams, they are actually waking up more tired and exhausted because they are traveling places. They're just, I don't know what people believe, if you want to call it a soul, a spirit, whatever. That is what's going on. These are abductions of your spirit, your essence. It's not your body, it's not physical, but it's still just as emotionally draining and can be traumatic. And it's really hard to adjust back to regular day life, too. Again, we have the question of getting into the paranormal. What is an extraterrestrial? Do we really know? We think of it as something from outer space, but other than that, do we really know? Do they have a spirit? Do they have a soul? Do they connect to us the same way we connect to them? Are our souls already entangled? Did our souls come down and have this experience while their souls went back and had that experience and were somehow overlapping? People get what we like to call downloads. They get information that they do not know what to do with. Either complex mathematical formulations, information about future events, past events, upcoming things in their own life. Again, it very much borders the paranormal, what we think of as the paranormal, but it is very much attached to this phenomenon as well. But again, this is hard to deal with for people because they don't have somebody to talk to. You can't just start a conversation in the grocery store line and say, yeah, I had this dream last night where I had a UFO come in and take me. You can't do that. You can't go into your yoga studio and say, hey, last night's meditation was great, but by the way, while I was in there, I talked to 3 aliens and they said, you're going to get a new car next month. It happens, though. It happens. I don't think all empaths are experiencers, but I'm really pretty positive that almost all, if not, experience are empaths. So this is a good thing, and it's a bad thing. It's a good thing because we get to experience life very deeply. It's a bad thing because we get to experience life very deeply. Coped with all these other things that we talked about earlier in the presentation, yeah, you actually feel bad for the guy who's taking you out of your house at night. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's there. We actually care about the planet. We care about, and that's part of the downloads and stuff too. People become immensely attached to causes that feel a need to fix the planet, to do this, to do that, I mean, I'm living proof. I don't want to be up on this stage here today. If I could walk away from this game, I would. They make my life hell if I try. So what do we do with all this? How do we escape these lost feelings of not fitting in on Earth, not fitting in as a person, not being comfortable in our own skin? How do we wipe the slate clean? This is a huge problem in the experiencer community that a lot of people don't want to talk about. There is a huge substance abuse problem, huge addiction rates, because we need anything to cope, whether it's alcohol, drugs, coffee, cigarettes, scratch tickets. You will find a lot of addictive behavior within the experiencer community. And the problem with it is, we all understand why. We know that person is drinking way too much, but we know they're just trying to cope. So we overlook it. We know Johnny's not a bad guy. We know he's going to lose his shit if he doesn't go home and have a beer. So we overlook it. And I don't know how many people have dealt with addiction problems, either themselves or in their families. Trying to deal with emotional trauma through a substance does not work. It does not work at all. It creates a bigger problem. It creates a new problem. And it is a deathly cycle. It continues on and on and on. They feel good for a little bit, they forget about it, then they feel bad, and they do it again. All this goes on while the experiences are going on top of it, while the memories are going on, while the flashbacks are going on. This is not a way to live, folks. But for so many of us, it is our daily reality. And it's in our face. The pop culture UFO stuff is everywhere. You cannot escape it. I know it sounds a little silly to complain about it at a UFO festival, but it's everywhere. Again, with these triggers, you can't escape this topic now, but not in the right way. It's not coming at us in a healthy way, not for the experiencers. And with all this stuff going on, we don't really care about documents. You can pull up a secret document that says, yes, UFOs are real, and we're going to look at you and go, no kidding. We've known this. We were telling you this. Disclosure doesn't mean anything to us because it's not going to help. What does that do for us? It doesn't do anything for us. You can prove UFOs are real or not real. It doesn't matter. The problem's still there. The effect is still there. I really don't care what the cause is. And that's what we've been doing for so long. We've been focused on the cause, not the effect. We've known they've been here since mankind was here. And here we are. We still have to hide. We still can't talk about this. We still can't help each other. And you know, there's that old saying, stereotype that, oh, if somebody says they're abducted by aliens, they're crazy, they're a crackpot. What if somebody is? What if somebody is a crackpot? What if they are actually just lying? Are we that unhuman that we can't take 5 minutes of our day to talk to another human being who is so desperate that he has to make up a story to talk to you? This is not a human problem. I mean, an alien problem. The problem is here on Earth. This is a human problem. We treat each other like crap. We really do. So what do we do as experiencers? Do we all shut up? Do we say, you want to go prove this nuts and bolts? Go do it. Do we all stop reporting every sighting, everything? No. No, we can't do that. We will implode. We have to tell these stories. It's a lonely road, but we have to tell them. But not for your entertainment, not for ratings on a show. We have to do this for each other. We have to let each other know it's okay. We have to be there for each other. We are the answer, but we don't have the whole answer. No one person has the whole answer. I have a little piece of it. You have a little piece of it. You have a little piece of it. We need to be able to come together. We need to be able to heal. We need to be able to talk about this stuff. And nobody's going to do it for us. We have to be the ones who plant the seeds of change. Everybody likes the system. Why? Because we're used to it. We're comfortable in it. We all know it's screwed up. But nobody wants to create ripples. We need to. We need to. If you look at the circuit for these lectures, a lot of these guys have been around for a long time. They've done a great job over the years, but they're getting older. Eventually, they're not going to be here anymore. I mean, we just had Stan retire this year. What's going to happen to ufology? Are we going to let it just become a TV show? Are we going to let it, or does this actually mean something to us? Do we actually care? I think we do, and if we don't, I think we should. But we're not alone, you know, and that is the biggest part. So many of us feel so isolated and have felt so alone for so long that we don't know what to do with this. We don't even know how to get it started. We don't know. It doesn't just jump into a conversation over coffee. How do you just be like, oh yeah, and last night, by the way, I was abducted. We need to find a way to make it easier and accessible for anybody who needs this help. We need to stop making it such a negative thing. You're not mentally ill. You're actually physically affected in your brain, in your body, you have now been conditioned to be fearful, not only of the situation, but of other people, of yourself even. You know, the markers are cool. You know, it keeps a little piece of history alive. But these are the markers we all end up with. We are all human. We all pass. And sometimes the universe is really good about sending you a reminder. This is a photo or a painting by somebody we lost this year. Carol Adams. She was a part of a lot of our local groups at KRI, Seacoast Saucers, Granite Sky, and a lot of the other our local teams. She didn't have the normal story. She didn't fit the standard narrative, but she had experiences that affected her. And that's the biggest thing. You don't have to think it's aliens or not. It affected them, but she walked in and she had a smile and she would light up that room. She was there for anybody. And now that she's gone, I wanted to pay her a little tribute, but in looking at it, she taught me something too. She mattered. Each of us matter. Luckily, Chuck from Seacoast Saucers was able to videotape her and get her story before she passed. But how many times does that not happen? How many pieces of the puzzle do we lose every day because we're so unwilling to take 5 minutes to listen to somebody? That's pretty much what I had. I'm going to open this up for some questions. Again, here's the website with an extra G, apparently. But yeah, like us on Facebook. It's obviously the easiest and fastest way to spread information, let people know how and where they can find help. And
Thank you, Mike. Is there a general consensus amongst experiencers, a general consensus of why this is happening? Besides life and death, it's a greatest mystery, in my mind. So is there a general consensus? Like, you've talked to psychics, channelers, probably things that the general public hasn't done. Is there any general consensus why?
The biggest general consensus that I've come across, and again, this is one of those things, there's probably a different answer for every person. Everybody looks at it a little differently. But a lot of us feel that we're placed here. This isn't on accident. We're here to do something. A lot of people feel like they have a mission, something they have to accomplish, that they're here for a purpose.
So sort of like an ambassador in a way, or an advocate?
Perhaps. The problem with it is, though, a lot of people, I don't think they have the ego with it to call themselves an ambassador or this or that. But a lot of times they feel like they have a mission, but they don't know what that mission is either, which again adds to the confusion and the stress.
My last question is, what answer would make it okay for all you or other experiences have gone through, the PTSD and everything? What answer could make it okay for you of why it's happening?
That's a great question. I don't think there ever will be an answer that makes it okay. It's more what I come to terms with and what I'm comfortable with. I don't think it's an open umbrella. I don't think that necessarily means it would be okay, that this person next to me would be okay with those same terms. And maybe the person next to him might have a different set of terms. I think that's all personal. I don't think there's one answer. Because with a lot of this stuff, it's very personal. Although it might be the same type of pattern happening to a lot of people, it is definitely very, very personal.
Okay. Well, I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alex. Thank you, Mike, for sharing this. I think what you're talking about is very important. The personal experience, the subjective, psychological, emotional aspect of the experience or phenomenon is very important to discuss. Just very briefly, I'm an experiencer myself. I'm not an authority or an expert, but about 3 nights ago, I woke up and I screamed. I was like, no! Because I heard a rustling. I thought I heard a rustling in my bedroom. I thought I was about to be abducted, And if I tell some people about that, they might think I'm crazy. But I'm struggling with some PTSD and whatnot around the experience. It's really hard to talk about that openly. You can't just walk into a coffee shop and, start up a casual conversation. The other night I was having this experience. I woke up screaming. I thought I was going So I really appreciate your being honest about this and talking, having the courage and information about this. However, I want to politely, respectfully disagree with you about one aspect. Just speaking for myself, not for anybody else. As an experiencer struggling with things like the PTSD aspect, it is important for me to find out more about disclosure and official secrecy. For me, the more proof that we have, this is just speaking for myself, the more proof that we have that there is a cover-up, the more information we have about the secrecy and the official denial, the more I feel like it validates my experience, helps lift the stigma a little bit. I just want to share that, and thank you again.
No, thank you. And again, this is a very general presentation. I'm trying to cover something that affects a lot of people. I'm only one voice. You're absolutely correct that not everybody is going to fit into it. But I will disagree with something you just said very quickly. You said, I'm not an expert. Yes, you are. You know more about this than almost any researcher. Why? Because you lived it. And that's something people need to understand too. These guys have done a lot of work, they've done a lot of research, but guess what they did it on? They did it on people like you. You are the researcher, you are the expert. You know more about it than they ever will. So remember that. But no, other than that, I definitely agreed with everything you said. Thank you. Are there any other questions?
This isn't really a question, but what if all the experiencers, like the Women's March, What if everybody got together, as many people as you could gather, and go to Washington and say, hey, fess up? Is that something that anybody could organize? I'm not an organizer, but
Yeah.
I come up with good ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is something that could be organized. The real question is, what would it really accomplish? I know what you're saying, and it would show numbers. It would show that there's a lot of people behind this. But would they accept it and go, oh, look at all these people, this is real? Or would they go, oh my God, there's a lot of nutbags out here? But yeah, no, we do need more of a, I think, not political front, but a public way. We need to be in the public more, not necessarily speaking about our experiences, but kind of give them a little jab, be like, hey, we're still here. I think that's part of the problem too. It's not just dealing with the experiences, it's almost getting to that point where we're starting a movement like, no, we are done. We're not hiding in the shadows. We're not doing it the old way anymore. We're here, and we're going to make you listen one way or the other, or we're going to ignore you. But we are going to deal with this because this is a problem, and we're going to do it right here out in the open.
But we're really not out in the open. We're in these little huddles.
Yes, no, and I agree. Something needs to change with that. I think it's a good mix of both. I think that's become a hot topic, and it's drawing a lot of people in. You get good audiences, you get good ticket sales, you get good book sales. But I think it's more the researchers, because, like I said, I mean, he disagreed, which he has every right to, and a lot of other people may as well. But for me, it doesn't do anything. My experiences are going to be what they were today, and they're going to be the same tomorrow, whether we disclose this or not. It's not going to change. It doesn't do much for me. And I do get that, like, all right, if it was open, you know, and the government came out and said, all right, they're real, we've been hiding them, it would give people a little solace. You know, they'd feel like, all right, my story has a little bit more credibility. But if you believe somebody's been lying to you for years and years and years and years, and then they come out and tell you what you want to hear, why are you going to be so quick to suddenly believe them?
Some people go to like Bashar, and there are certain popular channelings of extraterrestrials, supposedly. Do they ever challenge them and say, why are you doing this to our physical bodies? Do you have any stories about that, of like people that can, you know, go to channelings or talk to Bashar or these other ET supposed connections, and do they ask those hard questions, like, and what answers do they get to those questions?
Yeah, people do, not necessarily with specific named extraterrestrials, but, you know, people do try to make contact, whether it's through mediumship, meditation, this and that. And unfortunately, I mean, the answer can vary, but the very general answer that a lot of people get is, you'll know when the time is right. Doesn't help you in the moment, but that's usually what people get. So,
One follow-up. Have those people passed on, or are they young enough where most of them are still with us on this planet?
I'm talking about, yeah, living people.
So, you know, but I'm saying if there is a plan and a mission, maybe they'll be occurring before these people die off, like the people, like you say, Hopkins and other people are dying off. So maybe there is something, the proof will be in that reality if something does happen where they are ambassadors or helpers with some change before they get 60 or 70 years old.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that would be the goal, is we got to start it now, but maybe we won't see it come to fruition, but maybe it'll be that much easier for the next generation to push it forward, or if not them, the next one. We all kind of got to come in waves and do what we can until it's out there. But Mike.
Hi, Mike. That was great. That was a great talk. As an experiencer, not me, but you, how do you respond to someone like the great Dr. Stephen Greer, who claims that all abductions, all experiences are done by the military? I don't think you would agree with that, but I'd like to hear what your answer is.
I do not agree with that, but I mean, it could be possible. It's not our military, it's theirs if it's military. But yeah, no, it's not all military. I do believe there's military interference on top of these, but no, by no stretch of the imagination do I believe they're all military. Thank you.
I'll be nice. It's okay. I just want a little clarification on the pop culture aspect because you seem to come down on it, but at the same time, for researchers to be able to have money to live on, they need to get, some of that pop culture has to feed back. But I do get it that it's the same problem. You do bring out people who are willing to say anything for the exposure, for the money, for whatever. Can you talk a little bit about what that means to experiencers, seeing both ends, that some of it's fraud and some of it's needed?
Yeah, like a lot of these guys, we're going to walk out of this firm and they're set up in the next firm and they have their books. That does not bother me at all. They're just trying to make a living, and believe me, being an author is a hard way to get rich, But yeah, that part, and I think it's personal for what people find offensive and don't. I think it changes from person to person. But yeah, when you see somebody out there who has no idea what they're talking about, just big flashy, just raking in money, doing it for the money, doing it for the attention, yeah, it pisses you off because they're gambling with house money. They're gambling with your story. They're gambling with your life. And they got nothing to lose. And you have everything riding.
So do you recommend any good filters for good information to separate those kinds of people out?
I think it's too personal. Somebody you might adore and thinks doing the right thing, I might not have any taste for. Okay. And that's with anything. And that's kind of the problem. There is no right answer. There is no wrong answer. It's different. So we have to come to an agreement of how to handle it. And by the way, he was so fond of me, he actually wore the same shirt to impress me.
Is that weird? Is that creepy? No, I did not know. This is clean.
An applause for laundry. Speaking of getting back to the military aspect, Misha Johnston, MK Ultra. I mean, what's your feeling on that? MK Ultra. Have you heard of that?
Isn't MK Ultra like the drug experiments?
Yes, it's that and how the military is involved. Okay. Are you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes on. I think it's real. I don't think it, again, covers the whole picture. It's not really my area of expertise. I think it goes on. I think it's interesting. I think it's a fascinating subject and subcategory, all this. But it's not really where my focus is, so I don't really want to comment on it too heavily because I don't have a lot of input, good or bad. I just don't have enough information to make a full comment on it. And that's as fair as I can be about it. Are there any more questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike. I was very moved by what Mike had to say, and it brought up a lot of stuff for me, and being that we're ahead of time a bit, I thought I would just share some thoughts. I had the unique privilege of attending and being part of the first ever abductee support group meetings that were held, that we know of, in New York City, starting in the latter 1980s in the home of Bud Hopkins, a name fairly well known to a lot of you as the first person to study very deeply this phenomena in a scientific way. And my experience was doubly unique in that I'm not an abductee, but my sister Helen had these experiences. She worked with Bud, and I was Bud's longtime assistant. So I got to be a fly on the wall in this remarkable forum. For me, the best support groups that continue in the tradition that Bud established are embodied in ones like Granite State with Mike, and Seacoast Saucers with Chuck and Valerie, and other groups around the country. The last thing you need to be to lead a group like this is a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a social worker. That's good, but what you really need to be is an open, caring, honest person with some basic leadership skills who can both be objective and feel and share and direct energy in the room. We superimpose on our experiences. I know for myself, coming up through the ranks as an investigative writer beginning in the later 1970s, my beliefs about the UFO phenomena and its implications about the abduction phenomena grew and changed over the years. Not even so much based on what I was learning, but what I knew about myself and what I could tolerate, or what I had come in believing. In other words, if you've grown up, say, in a very strict Judeo-Christian fundamentalist family, and you have abduction experiences, the chances are you're going to impose on it a matrix of your beliefs. Good, evil, punishment, reward, God, the devil. If you're a complete agnostic, your experiences will be completely different. A perfect example for me was some years into working with Bud, and that meant basically being at his shoulder, working with hundreds, and I mean hundreds, of people who had had these experiences. We were friends for 35 years, and for half of that time, I worked with him formally or informally. Some of these cases were case studies that went on for years. Other ones might be a single meeting or a single interview and hypnotic regression. And some early years along, one of the concepts and realities for these people that came up was very disturbing to me. The idea of hybrids, that there are beings out there that are part us and part them, which explains some of the procedures that so many people report of being on the table. And what is the whole hybrid thing about? Where are they? And what started to come up in certain cases, one comes to mind in particular, a young woman who moved to New York from the Midwest, who had a lifelong history of this, and Bud worked with her for years through, I'm sure, several dozen regressions. Went out to Ohio, spent time with her family, and there was a being, a person, if you will, that came into her life at a certain point and would be there at other key points. He was fairly low-key, a little odd-looking, but certainly passed for a perfectly normal human being. But other information that I got firsthand from her, physical proofs and things, started to really rattle me, that I could deal with the idea of missing pregnancies as a concept, and again, hybrids as a concept, but the reality of these beings was so disturbing to me that I simply put it out of my mind and focused on other things, even though I'm working in the midst of this cauldron. And it took several years for me to just be more comfortable with the discomfort of this part of the other realities. One of the things that comes up for me in watching people like Mike grow and work and having the privilege of being with his group through the wonderful technological aspect of Skype, where I can spend time with people in groups all over the world, is that any support group is about supporting you relative to any commonality thing. Whatever it is, you want to lose weight, you have a drinking problem, you're the victim of sexual abuse, It's a way to commune with people who are like-minded in a safe space and begin to understand and accept aspects of it and move forward in your life and follow your dreams. It is of such extraordinary value because otherwise these people are struggling on their own and they go out in the world because of these support groups getting back a bigger piece of themselves. Then there's the idea of agendas. You mentioned Dr. Greer. Dr. Greer is a complex person. I disagree with a fair amount of his philosophy and things that he's done, but he's also done some important things like initiate the active aspect of what we now call the disclosure movement and create the first disclosure event. But he has driven me crazy on and off over the years by making blanket statements like all aliens are good, or all abduction experiences that are unpleasant for people are military abductions. The reason they happen is the forces that be don't want us to have a good relationship with the aliens. And so my first thought is there is no way on earth that anybody can know with empirical certainty that all aliens are good. If you were a being who was the combination of the President of the United States, the head of the NSA, the royal leader of 18 alien races, you still couldn't know for sure that all non-human intelligences are good. It's not a true statement. By the same spirit, nobody can say that experiencers who have negative experiences are the victims of a dark government plot to give the aliens a bad name. These are called agendas, and once you see them for what they are, you need to let them go. You can believe what you want, but it's your belief, and keep it separate from what you can actually know as empirical fact. For me, this is work that is in its infancy. I like to think that there will come a time, probably we'll never see it, but where this whole period of human evolution from the mid-1940s through to whenever, when we human beings were struggling with this idea that we were alone in the universe, and now, of course, we know there are many races that come and go and interdimensional beings, and we start studying it in elementary school, and it's the subject of textbooks and lectures and, you know, stuff we talk about with our parents when we're not taking a field trip to the moon or that kind of thing. More to the point, that we will study in our schools that there was this time in history where key people put aside the possibility of a comfortable life, fully accepted by their peers, to pioneer the studies that we now all accept, and that people like Bud and Mike and Chuck, people better known, people lesser known, will be acknowledged for the contributions they made to helping us grow up, get through this rough period of time, and become part of the greater sphere of intelligences out there. Just to close the thought, after more than 40 years in this work, I'm sure of several things. The most important one is I hardly know anything after 40 years compared to what there is to know. And that's not a bad place. There's a definition of being a Zen beginner, which is knowing that you know nothing and having it be okay. I know more than nothing. I may even know more than you. I've studied a lot. I've traveled the world on this subject. I've met with hundreds of people that have had these experiences. I've written books, spoken at conferences. I know we're not alone. I know that authoritarian figures cover that up, that human beings in general are open to the possibility, but the control mechanisms that run governments and oversee what we'll laughingly call history are very insecure about this. The idea that if it was made public in a way that would not topple the stock markets, throw a scare into petrochemical industry, increase membership in mental institutions overwhelmingly, empty out liquor stores, and cause chaos in the streets, that the biggest fear of control mechanisms like governments is, God forbid, we human beings might begin to see ourselves first as human beings, not as Americans or Chinese or Russians or Indians or men or women or Christians, Buddhists, Muslims, atheists or what have you, not as black, brown, orange, green or red people, but as human beings. And as such, having more in common with each other, especially in a period of time where tribalism is on the rise. Our own leaders are pushing tribalism of driving us all further and further apart from each other, no more, no less than Pashtuns are being pushed farther away from other tribes in Afghanistan, or Shiites and Sunnis are murdering each other over interpretations of the teachings of Muhammad. If we saw ourselves as human beings first, we'd be in a much better position to move forward on looking around and saying, my God, the first national security issue that we should be dealing with is the environmental crisis that is on the tipping point now that we might not even be able to deal with effectively. But that's more important than creating a new generation of nuclear weapons, of funding wars that we don't even know why we're there anymore, or antagonism of us toward our neighbors. Anyway, just some random thoughts there. It's 10 after 10. We begin with our next speaker, Jennifer Stein, at 10:30. Have a wonderful 20 minutes.